You can get your soil today. It's your skin place. You make high quality machinery like affordable for everyone. Weatherization Ventures like
Indian attorney knows how to fight and knows how to win. WeWin.com.
WeWin.com.
I'm attorney Carolines. We'll fight damn to get you the money you deserve.
WeWin.com. WeWin.com.
With over $1 million.
Buddy Kittle
is now joining.
Ann Anderson
is now joining.
Use this device for the meeting.
Carla, this is Bev. Are you watching when we'll have a quorum?
Oh, we already have a quorum, Bev.
Okay, got it. All right.
Yeah. I guess we can
ready?
go ahead and start.
Okay. All right. Welcome everyone to the Housing Policy Advisory Committee meeting. So we know that we have a quorum, and I wanted to make sure that we had sent out a press release.
Yes, the press has been notified.
All right. All right. If we could go around the squares, and if everybody could introduce him or herself, that would be great. I can start. My name is Bev Merrill. I work at Welcome House in Covington, and I'm the chair, and I also represent the homeless population.
I'm Jason Dunn. I'm with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, proxy for Secretary Friedlander, and I've known Beth most of my professional career. So,
Dave Crayer, People's Self-Help Housing in Lewis County, also known Bev a long time, representing rural nonprofits.
I'm David Allgood with the Center for Accessible Living in Louisville, Kentucky, a disability resource center. I'm the proxy for Melanie Piazza.
Hi, I'm Becky Roerig with River City Housing in Louisville, Kentucky, despite what my name says on my screen. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Vicki Bowling. I'm with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, the LIHEAP program specialist. I also deal with weatherization.
What was your name again, please?
I'm sorry, Vicki Bowling.
Okay, thanks, Vicki.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Cassie Hudson, and I'm the Executive Director of Partnership Housing in Booneville, Kentucky.
I'm Phyllis Parker, and I represent persons with disabilities.
Dean Lloyd, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet.
Wilma Kelly with Baitable Housing. Asha Keith Thurman, Field Office Director for HUD, State of Kentucky.
Kathy Finkelsteller, Permanent Proxy for Commissioner Dennis Keene, Department for Local Government.
Hi, this is Lorna Brewer with the Energy and Environment Cabinet, and I'm proxy for Secretary Rebecca Goodman.
Hi, this is Debbie Knight, and I'm with HUD.
I'm Scott McReynolds. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Development Alliance.
Afternoon, everybody. Benjamin Siegel. I'm General Counsel of the Department of Housing, Buildings, and Construction, and I'm here as a proxy for Commissioner Rick Rand.
Hi, this is Buddy Kittle with Stockton Mortgage. I'm here representing the Mortgage Bankers Association of Kentucky.
And my name is Kay McAfee. I'm with Kentucky Housing Corporation and Housing Policy and Policy Administrator. This is my first meeting that I'll be joining.
I'll take the opportunity to introduce myself after Kay. Wendy Smith with Kentucky Housing Corporation. Very glad to have Kay. She is working closely with me to help take on some of the extra work that she has related to all of the extra programs we're saying grace over these days. So I'm glad for you all to meet Kay. She'll be at HPAC meetings, hopefully forever and ever.
I'm Kelly Reynolds with Kentucky Housing Corporation over our single family programs, including new construction, HTF home repair, and weatherization.
This is Craig Brock. I'm Executive Director of Bell Action Agent.
Lonnie Campbell
is now joining.
Bonnie, did you want to introduce yourself, please? We're going around the squares.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Lonnie Campbell, Kentucky Association of Counties.
Bartlett Hale, Kentucky Housing Corporation.
Anyone else?
Winston Miller, Executive. Excuse me, go ahead.
No, sir, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I don't see the squares, so I'm not sure where I am in the role. But
Neither I can either.
Winston Miller, Executive Director, Kentucky Housing.
Ann Anderson, LMAK, Willie C. Plaza, Resident Council President.
Anyone else? All right, well, welcome. I wanted to check and see if there were any issues that weren't on the agenda that anyone wanted to add to the agenda. All right. So first, if folks could take a few minutes, if you haven't already done so, to review the annual report. And after you've reviewed, I'm looking for a motion and a second to approve it.
This is Jason Dunn. I move approval.
This is David Alligan. I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. And then likewise, if folks could look at the minutes of our last meeting back in January, see if they look correct, and if we could have a motion to approve in a second.
This is Becky Rohrig. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or comments?
Yes, just one comment, please. Was that Phyllis that made the second? Who seconded the minutes? Who?
I did. Ann Anderson.
Oh, Ann, thank you.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Any opposed? All right, so we've approved our minutes. Next, I would like to welcome our new HUD Field Office Director. So I'd like to introduce Asha Key Thurman as the Kentucky Field Office Director. She started in January and serves as HUD's liaison to mayors, city managers, state and local officials, members of Congress, private and nonprofit developers, stakeholders, and customers. She began her career in HUD in 2011 as a financial analyst in the District of Columbia office. During her tenure at HUD, she has worked in the offices of public housing and community planning and development, both in headquarters and in the field. Her most recent position was as the diversion director for HUD's Office of Public Housing in the Atlanta Regional Office. Before working for HUD, Asha Key worked at the District of Columbia Housing Authority, where she held several positions in the Housing Choice Voucher Program, the Central Office Cost Center, and as Treasury Analyst, where she managed all the financial transactions regulated by the agency. She is a graduate of Howard University in Washington, D.C., where she received a degree in finance. She's a native of New Orleans and enjoys traveling and hosting family gatherings. Asha Key is an advocate for higher education and volunteers in her local community, providing career counseling services to underserved families. We welcome you to the Housing Policy Advisory Committee. And it's my understanding you're going to give us a briefing. We're going to initiate you properly.
Sure. So thank you all for inviting me. I am always humbled at the opportunity to speak with our communities and the folks that really do the work on the ground, right? And so as you know, we push out these policies, we push out these programs, but it's really you guys that execute the programs, right? So one, thank you from the Regional Administrator, Jose Alvarez, and Deputy Regional Administrator, Tiffany Cobb. We thank you for all of the work that you're doing in your local community. communities. And I'm going to turn off my camera because I don't think it's working properly. But thank you, Bev, for that warm introduction. I am always pleased when people pronounce my name correctly, and you said it as if we have been friends for years. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. Just to give you guys kind of a brief overview of what we have going on here at HUD, right? So the Office of Field Policy and Management, as many of you may or may not know, is kind of really the linchpin, right? The linchpin in the connections between all of our program offices here in the Louisville office. I have Debbie Knight with me on the phone, who is our senior program analyst here in the office. And so you guys are probably more familiar with Debbie than you are me or some of the other folks in the office. But in this office here in Louisville, we have the Office of Multifamily, Community Planning and Development, Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, as well as the Office of Public Housing, right? So I know at some point all of you guys have touched those different programs, right? Whether it's reaching out to us or having us reach out to you guys. I see Wendy on the phone. I know we are in constant communication with Kentucky Housing Corporation. So we thank you guys for your partnership. One of the big, probably smiles that has come across my face in the last month or so is the allocation of disaster funding to our communities that were impacted by the tornadoes back in December of 2021, right? So we know, and then that's probably the biggest lift that we've been partaking in for the last couple months is recovery, right? We have David Raley, who is on my staff, a FPM senior management analyst as well, on the ground and working with the communities to get our communities back up and running. I am pleased to say that we are in preparation for a disaster recovery fair that is going to take place on May the 21st. In Mayfield. So that information is coming out or should have already been disseminated to some of our local partners. That will be in Mayfield. And then we will have one, I believe it's June the 4th in Dawson Springs, right? We had it scheduled the week after, but realized the week after that was a holiday. So probably not the best use of our time. So we're hoping with that, we have a lot of our partners that will come out and kind of provide this one-stop shop, right? To our residents, whether they're receiving a subsidy from us or not, or if it's just folks in the community that's looking to touch base with some of the resources that we have available. So that has been our biggest lift. That has been our biggest workload over the last couple of months or so. The Office of Public Housing, again, still works in providing safe, decent, and inclusive communities for our families. And so, public housing is near and dear to my heart. I've spent the last probably 10 years of my HUD career in the Office of Public Housing, right? And then at the Housing Authority. So I know the work that you guys are doing on the ground. And I guess I will probably just go ahead and throw it out there that there was some reallocation of emergency housing vouchers. And I believe that Louisville is a recipient of some of those vouchers, so that will be coming out later in the month or so. So we're happy to announce that. It will be an official announcement from our Deputy Assistant Secretary. And so I know that was in the works for a while because some of our agencies were not able to utilize those vouchers, and so they were able to reallocate those to communities that will be able to utilize them in a more expeditious time frame, right? So, a lot is on the horizon at HUD. One of the other probably big things that has come out is this week as HUD's kind of return to the physical workspace, right? So just so you know, we have been closed for 2 years, guys, and some of you probably as well. So this week is our first week, and I won't say back to work because we've always been working, right? We've never stopped working, but it's back to the physical workspace. So I am here in the Louisville office today, and we do have about 13 folks in here, so it is nice to see the folks that do the work. We are not officially open to the public yet, you guys. That is forthcoming. And then we're still on mission critical only travel. So that means pretty much anything that's disaster related, we will be traveling to, but we will not be in person until we get the okay for the Deputy Secretary, as we want to ensure the safety of not only our employees, but also the community community at large. But all good news, all forthcoming. I thank you guys for your patience with us during this transition, and I look forward to getting out and meeting you guys face to face when time and our schedules all permit. So thank you again for the invite. I really do appreciate it. I will try to be on as many meetings as I can with you guys, and then I look forward to working with many of you individually in your respective roles. So thank you, Bev.
All right, well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Next, we have some Kentucky Housing Corporation updates.
Yeah, thanks, Bev. I'm going to share some updates with you all on our COVID relief programs and then what KHC's been doing as part of the collective recovery and rebuilding efforts in Western Kentucky. And then Kelly Reynolds will share weatherization updates and come discussion with you all. So some of this, hopefully you all will recall from previous meetings, I've talked about the allocation of COVID-19 relief funds that have come to Kentucky Housing Corporation. So I'm aiming to kind of let you all know what we're doing with those buckets of money. And I'll start with the Homeowner Assistance Fund, because this is one of our newest, and I want to make sure people know, if you have a homeowner anywhere in the state, this is statewide, who is behind on their mortgage, their taxes and insurance, HOA fees, we're even doing utility assistance, we have funds to help. These are funds through Treasury, and they are pretty flexible. They do have to have gotten behind during the pandemic, due to loss of income, increased household costs, a medical event, something that caused them to get behind. But it is a pretty flexible eligibility. And we can help with a maximum of $35,000 per household. And this is not a loan. This is funds to help them get caught up and keep people in home ownership who got behind during the pandemic. We have $85 million in these funds, and we have till September of 2025 to utilize them. And so far, we have committed just a little over $6 million of those funds. Some have actually gone out to help homeowners, and some are in the pipeline to be paid out. Most of it is going to loan servicers or the banks that hold the mortgages to get people caught up. But I just want to make sure that you all know, if you have a Kentuckian who's a homeowner who's behind on their mortgage or associated costs that are tied to that mortgage, we have assistance to help them, and they can apply today. I'll pause there in case anybody has a question about it.
I do. Quick question. So for Louisville or the other PJs, do they go directly to this website as well?
This is unlike our rental assistance program. Only one entity per state got these funds, and so we are operating across the entire state. We are working with housing counseling agencies, but you come in through that application and you'll get routed to the right housing counseling agency to do intake and everything. It's a largely online application, but some of it can be done face-to-face too if a household needs. Anyway, I just want to make sure you all know about it. So please, if you know someone who needs help anywhere in the state, please have them get in line. Those funds are not used up. Like I said, we've committed about a little over $6 million out of 85. So we have dollars to help for the next couple of years.
So they apply online to KHC?
Yes, ma'am. And then they will eventually get a call from a housing counseling agency, but we first want to do that intake so we don't waste anybody's time and make sure, they're eligible and we should move them on to the next step. Okay. The next one is one I've shared with you all information about probably for the last year and a half or so, and that's the Healthy at Home Eviction Relief Fund. We are still operating that. We opened it with Treasury dollars in February of last year, 2021. And so in that time, so February, March, April, so in the last 13, 14 months, we have paid out from KHC a little over $137 million in rent assistance and utility assistance for renters. 99% of that has gone directly to a landlord or to the utility. A little tiny sliver has gone to tenants. When their landlord refuses to participate, we pay the tenant directly so that they can pay their rent themselves. So we have paid out almost 42,000 individual payments on behalf of a little over 30,000 households. Of course, one household might have multiple payments, right? Rent and multiple utilities. The average now, it's been going down every week. It's now about $4,500. It was closer to $6,000 in the beginning of the pandemic when people had a lot of back rent. This program helps people get caught up with up to 12 months worth of back rent or back utilities. And everyone who gets the assistance also gets 3 months of future rent or 3 months of future utilities, depending on what they've applied for. They do have to be behind to apply, but we've got plenty of funds. So we're averaging about $10.5 million per month in rent and utility assistance that we're paying out. And again, before the pandemic, we had never done this kind of an assistance program before. So when you look at our overall grant was $264 million of emergency rental assistance 1.0. And so in just a little over a year, we've granted, subgranted $38.7 million to Louisville and Lexington. We then reallocated another $38.7 million to Louisville and Lexington. And that just became part of their grants from Treasury. So that left our coffers and went to theirs. We've paid out, again, a little over $137 million. We've used a little over $12 million for admin at KHC. So when you add that all up, it's $227 million that we have expended, committed, subgranted, what have you. That's 86% of that grant. I'm really proud of this because when we were allocated that money, we didn't know, would we be able to use it? Would we be able to mobilize? And we have really partnered with Louisville and Lexington to try to make sure they have enough funds. We will soon be dipping into our ERA Emergency Rental Assistance 2.0 funds for Healthy at Home eviction relief and some other uses. We have about $27 million remaining in this grant. We've got another $200 million remaining. What it says to me is, while I think that pandemic housing instability is starting to taper, there's just a lot of housing instability that was there before the pandemic, and we're actually able to help a lot of folks who might otherwise have, lost their housing and been evicted or have had to double or triple up with family. I'm really glad for it. I'm also quite proud of KHC because when you look at us as we rank across the nation, in terms of expenditures of Emergency Rental Assistance 1.0, the first grant, we rank 18th in the country at 83% funded. We're at 85 now, but they did this a little bit ago. We're 26th in the country by population. So we're punching above our weight. This is the same ranking, just a listing of states. I'm just very proud. Now, what you can see at the top of this is that there are a handful of states that have spent all of their funds. And actually, many of those at the top of this list have also spent all of their Emergency Rental Assistance 2.0 funding. Yes, some states are out of all of it. They have none left. And so we are concerned that Treasury is going to try to reallocate funds from Kentucky to other states. And I understand why they might look to do that. But I'd really like to keep that money for Kentucky because we have shown we need it and we can use it. And in theory, we should have our Emergency Rental Assistance 2.0 money until September of 2025. And there's no doubt in my mind that we could use all of those funds well before the end date of that second grant. Remains to be seen. Could be we'll ask HPAC to, send a letter to Treasury in support of Kentucky keeping that money. But I feel very proud that we haven't let the opportunity go by. We haven't lost the opportunity to help a lot of people with this one-time funding. And again, I really do feel like we're punching above our weight in terms of ramping up and getting really efficient and getting the dollars out to help folks. Any questions about emergency rental assistance before I move on? Okay. Another COVID bucket of funds that we're saying grace over is not short-term assistance like the Homeownership Assistance Fund or the Emergency Rental Assistance. It's called Home ARP, and it is home dollars, we always get home dollars. We get around 12 to 13 million a year, but we got a one-time special allocation of almost 52 million from HUD to create housing for people experiencing homelessness. It's an unprecedented amount, an unprecedented kind of earmarking, and some of the uses that they allow for, they've never allowed for before with these funds. And so we have laid out a plan that we submitted to HUD. It's already been approved. We were the first state to get our home ARP plan approved by HUD, and we're going to use the funds to do some training and capacity building. Mainly, most of the dollars are going to go toward the development of permanent affordable housing and permanent supportive housing, and I'll talk about that in a second. We're going to use a little bit to cover some supportive services, and we have set some aside for the possibility of the acquisition and development of what's called non-congregate shelter. That would be something like buying an old hotel or motel to convert into emergency shelter for people experiencing homelessness. So they're not full rental units, but it is non-congregate, meaning they're not all in one space. That was really supported by HUD because of the pandemic, and they want to encourage and allow for that with these funds. It's very tricky, though. I don't want to go into all of why it's tricky, but it's hard to, those are expensive to operate. Utilities, all that kind of stuff. It's tricky to do. So with the home ARP funds, we are in month 2 or 3 of what we call the Kentucky Supportive Housing Institute. Some of you on this call are even involved in that institute. And this is being led by the Corporation for Supportive Housing. So KHC engaged the Corporation for Supportive Housing last year because we've never developed a lot of permanent supportive housing for people experiencing homelessness. PSH is housing where it's got to be radically affordable because folks who are experiencing homelessness, they don't have a lot of money for rent. It's also got to have services tied to it. They've got to have some help to be able to maintain their housing stability. They're often folks who have severe mental illness, who have substance use disorders, who have just struggled with mental health or other issues that have made it really hard for them to sustain housing. So we didn't want to lose this opportunity while we have this one-time funding and we can use some of it for training and technical assistance. We had CSH come in and stand up this institute. They've done it in 13 other states. So it's a really good kind of proven approach to cultivating capacity. And so we have got, it's a 5-month training series, which is in person and remote and involves some ongoing direct technical assistance for each project team. We have 6 teams, 3 are located in Louisville and 3 are in the rest of the balance of state. And it is made up of a developer, a property management company, and a nonprofit service provider, where they come together to cultivate and craft and reshape a project that will hopefully be feasible enough to get funding from Kentucky Housing Corporation. And Louisville Metro is doing some really phenomenal one-time funding opportunities with some of their COVID funds. So we're really trying to seize this opportunity where there actually is money and there's the ability to support development teams to cultivate, a strong project, to develop the kind of housing that we don't have much of any permanent supportive housing in Kentucky, and we definitely need it. So if we can't do it now, when are we going to do it? So we're really excited about that. And even if the teams aren't going to be using any KHC money, we opened the institute to anybody who wanted to apply. Now, it was selective, so I think we had 9 apply, but only 6 got in. But we are doing it again next year, just so you know. We will be doing the Institute a second time next year for another group of development teams. Any questions about that? All right. Now, thanks. So let me also talk to you about something else that I didn't have on my bingo card, which was the tornado. This devastating tornado that came through Western Kentucky and really ravaged anybody who's near one of those red lines on this map. This is a FEMA map. I get one of these twice a week from FEMA, which is not something I ever expected to be part of my job. We have been asked to kind of be part of a lot of Kentucky Emergency Management and FEMA meetings and Red Cross when they were involved. They have largely exited Kentucky at this point. So I'm just going to share with you a little bit of like the data that we have and then what KHC has been doing. So there is very little congregate sheltering because of the pandemic. You know, often after disaster, there are these large congregate Red Cross shelters. They really hardly did any of that. You can see the light blue in the corner at the beginning of this chart in mid-December. There was a little bit congregate, but most of it has been what's called non-congregate. That's hotels and state parks. So at the peak, there were 1,400 people, not households, in non-congregate shelter. There are now 177. Well, that was as of last week. But so that has gone radically down. This does not account for folks who are living with family, who are doubled and tripled up. This is not a comprehensive count. I'm not trying to. One of the things I'm learning about disasters is it's hard to know exactly what the facts are because everything is changing all the time. But that's just to give you a sense of how it has gone. This is just same data in a different format to kind of give you a sense by county. What you can see is that Graves County, which is where Mayfield is, still has a very significant number of persons who are in that case in hotels. But Hopkins has a significant, and Warren County, which is Bowling Green, very significant numbers as well. In terms of the number of housing units lost, it's pretty significant. If you look where I have highlighted yellow, in terms of the number of units, homeownership and rental, that suffered major damage or were destroyed, according to the Red Cross, it's over 2,600 housing units. In a rural area of the state, that is just a phenomenal number of units. And when you look at it as a percentage of all occupied housing units, so that's the column right next to it, you'll see Graves County lost 5% of all occupied units. That's considered catastrophic at 5%, losing that many. Some of them were affordable housing complexes that are in the portfolio of projects that Kentucky Housing has funded. Some of them were public housing units that got destroyed. This is just that same data in terms of the percentage of occupied housing that was destroyed or majorly damaged. And so you can see Graves County, where Mayfield is, really suffered the worst. But it's pretty significant for a number of counties. Hopkins, so again, 5% or above is really catastrophic, but really 2% or more is considered really significant loss of housing units. And so it's a big challenge for those communities to think about how you rebuild. This is just the same numbers, just shown in a list of bullets. Again, it's a little over 2,600 damaged or majorly damaged or destroyed. There are some big barriers to rebuilding and to recovery. There are some supply chain constraints, just getting building materials, getting mobile homes. The state has purchased 200 trailer homes for people to live in, and FEMA is bringing some in, but there's a big backlog of just getting those in. There are a lot of uninsured or underinsured homeowners who, if they're insured, they can't get full FEMA help, but they've got to figure out what they're going to get from their insurance company first. There's a big question of, will the market return for rental units? Do the big complexes rebuild? And we only have a handful of nonprofit partners out in Western Kentucky that build units. And to expect them to suddenly be able to, quintuple their capacity or more is not really realistic. We've learned that in some areas the building codes don't allow mobile homes, and they're not sure if they want to, because it's a lot of these mobile homes, they're not going to be there for just 6 months. It might become permanent housing for some folks, or will be there for years. So each locality is kind of having to decide what they're willing to waive and give on for recovery. And then there aren't enough building inspectors. That's an issue that some of the Western Kentucky cities and counties have faced, is everybody needs an inspection to get something done, and they just, they're not staffed for that. They're staffed for a small, flow of work, not a giant amount all at once. So here's what KHC has done so far. We assembled an inventory of available apartments. We also inventoried damaged or destroyed units so that we could let FEMA and HUD know. But the inventory, we set that up really early so that if people are looking for an apartment, they can find something, west of I-65. We meet weekly with Kentucky Emergency Management and a bunch of other departments. And we have called all of our partners out in Western Kentucky to ask. One of our homeless partners is low on funding for rapid rehousing and sheltering folks, and we just got them more money. We just added to their existing grant so they would have enough funds to keep going. And we have just recently made awards to 2 habitats out in Western Kentucky, and they're using those funds to build houses for folks, with priority for people who lost their homes to the tornado. And some of the funds that we have given to the habitats and other nonprofits can be used just for home repair, just to fix a home where insurance won't cover the cost. We have the Dawson Springs Public Housing Authority lost a lot of units, but there's still rent assistance tied to those from HUD. So HUD is in the process of converting that rent assistance into housing choice vouchers that Kentucky Housing will oversee for that region. Dawson Springs doesn't do Section 8 vouchers, so we'll do that for them and add that to our Section 8 program. And then we're working with some service providers to try to help the folks who are still in a hotel or a state park, who just, it's not going to be easy for them to find something interim or permanent without some help, without case management and some rent assistance. We're meeting with them, service providers, later this week to kind of go household by household and talk about what can we do for them to try to help them get to something interim or permanent, so they can get out of the state park or hotel sheltering. This is just, I'm just showing you the inventory that we built of available units. I won't spend a bunch of time on it. Right now we're showing over 500 units in Kentucky available, and some in neighboring states. We do have a couple of potential future roles. We expect to be asked to do some targeted funding for multifamily projects to rebuild in Western Kentucky and for more single family housing. We would like to get more money for that, and we've been asking a little bit. We'll see if we're successful in that. We also, with the advent of, as Ms. Thurman noted, HUD very quickly, this happened faster than it ever does in most disasters. The Department for Local Government will be getting $75 million in HUD Community Development Block Grant disaster recovery funds to help some Eastern Kentucky areas that got flooding and Western Kentucky begin rebuilding. And we expect that it's possible we'll be partnering with DLG to help implement some of that, but that remains to be seen. And that is it for my updates. I welcome any questions.
There was a question to see if you might be able to send the slides out.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Are there other questions? All right, thank you, Wendy. Next, Kelly Reynolds is going to present on our weatherization programs.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I don't have slides because there are things to report, and then there are things that I just have to say we don't know about yet. So you'll hear what I'm saying once I get there. But first update is we do have a state plan that is due to Department of Energy for weatherization activities. This is our normal formula grant. So it's our annual formula grant. And that is due May 3rd. We are just adding some final attachments to it. It's pretty much ready to go. We had a public hearing on this state plan, which we are required to have, on April 12th. There were really no comments, went by in about 20 minutes. Just some notable additions or revisions that we've done to that state plan is we added a reweatherization process. Many of our subgrantees, some of whom are on the phone call today or on the meeting today, understand that we were given guidance last year from the Department of Energy to add reweatherization language to our state plan with the new legislation, which was a 15-year rolling date. What that means is if you've had weatherization done to your home within the past 15 years, you can't have it reweatherized. However, DOE has spent the past year trying to determine what the federal legislation means. We never had a process. So we've added a process in our plan of how we're going to monitor that, and we're going to see if that sticks so that we can actually implement that change. Our average cost per unit increases to $8,009. It goes up a couple $100 every year. That is how much we can spend per unit on weatherization activities. We've had to address Justice 40 in our state plan and add some just language kind of showing that we're acknowledging that Justice 40 does exist and that we are trying to do our best to serve minorities when possible. And we are keeping our changes for some of our training requirements in place. We have amended our state plan back in the fall, so we're keeping those in place. We also have included language in response to a WPN 22.5, which states that if someone is eligible for HUD housing, I'm using that in quotes, that they're automatically income eligible for weatherization. That is a national partnership between HUD and the Department of Energy. So, but we don't have any guidance on what kind of documentation are we supposed to be collecting to document that someone is eligible for HUD. So we've kind of added some of that documentation and some of that language into our state plan as well, so we can go ahead and use that. And then we also have added language and funding into our state plan to start replacing our vehicle fleet. Our vehicle fleet dates back to ARA days. So we're talking 2008, 2009, 2010 is probably some of the newer vehicles. Some of the subgrantees are using 2003 vehicles. A lot of them are not safe. So we have a lot of money to try to update that fleet. So that's kind of the basics. This year they did, Department of Energy did add weatherization ready funding to this annual allocation. They think that's going to stick around. So we found that out March 30th. And so we have had to address that in our state plan as well. There's very broad guidelines because the Department of Energy has never done that before. However, we are running a weatherization ready program with our LIHEAP funding. So we basically have kept those same rules, but increased the cost, the cost capped per unit. So that's kind of the basics. So that's our state plan. It's due next week. I don't see any reasons of why we can't get that submitted on time. That would be a July 1st start date on that grant, and it's the first of a 3-year grant. The big news in the weatherization arena is that as a state, we will be receiving $51 million. It's almost $52 million. It makes me cringe just a little bit because it's just nervous about how we're going to spend this. But the total is, if you want the exact total, it's $51,942,185.01. So that is to be used for weatherization activities. It was part of the bipartisan infrastructure legislation that was signed into effect back in the fallish. And so we are just starting to get guidance on this. It will be a 5-year grant. There are certain things that we have to address. We will have to submit a state plan. State plan is due July 1st. And there are specifics that we have to address. We have to address, this will have a Davis-Bacon requirement, but for multifamily units only, so 5 units or more. For our single family homes or any of our triplexes, quadruplexes, those will not have that regulation tacked onto them with this funding. We do have to address Justice 40, also with our workforce development, and we have to buy American. The fun part of Buy American is nobody knows what that means. Department of Energy is still trying to read through the guidance that the White House issued last week to figure out what materials that may affect as far as weatherization goes. So we still don't have a lot of guidance on how to address that in our state plans. The fun part of all of that is our first part of the state plan is due this week. So that is our budget. But we can do a very vague budget. We have to budget all the $51 million. That's what we're being told for the 5 years, but it's really broad. They just want us to put some broad placeholders in and submit that budget. And then the state plan is due July 1st. It also has to have a public hearing. They will not grant any extensions to that date. So our public hearing, we're slating for June 7th because unbeknownst to me, when I planned a vacation at the end of June, did I know that we were going to get $51 million and have a state plan due July 1st. So, that's how fun things go. So we're on a tight time frame. We are working closely with our project officer, who's giving us a lot of helpful guidance on what we need to do for that state plan. We are going to mirror what we're already doing, but obviously we struggle sometimes spending $6 million per year. So spending $51 million in addition to our $6 million each year is going to be a bit of a struggle. Our LIHEAP funds from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services are going to be extremely important with this funding structure, because we can braid our funding as we have been doing with our normal formula funding, but it does allow us to do a little bit more in a home because we still have to stick to that average cost per unit. So lots of challenges, lots of exciting things as well, but we will have to increase staff. This is a labor shortage, it's a national problem. So all of the grantees with weatherization funds are really nervous about how we're going to find staff to, even in our subgrantees, to really roll out and spend this money. So we just have to be more thoughtful and more creative in what we're doing. So we'll be looking to the subgrantee network on what to do. If any of you have ideas, please shoot me an email. No idea is a bad idea. I am throwing darts at the wall right now to see if one of them sticks. So the more ideas, the better, because maybe one of them will stick. So that's the update. Do I have any questions? I know it's a lot. It's a lot of money.
All right. Thank you very much, Kelly. Then we have a section for informational items, maybe some tidbits of information that you didn't think to put on the agenda that you thought people might be interested in hearing, or announcements. Does anybody have anything they'd like to share? I can let people know part of the COVID relief funds through HUD is that people who are experiencing homelessness have been issued what are called emergency housing vouchers. So across the state, folks have been selected for this. It's Section 8 vouchers, but the requirements are a little bit less in terms of screening, because often people who are homeless have histories that have made it difficult for them to get these vouchers. So we are just seeing a flurry of activity where folks are getting the vouchers. They're really great because you can use them in the balance of state area anywhere except Lexington or Louisville. So there's a lot of excitement about it, but also quite a challenge. Like, it's hard to find Section 8 eligible units. So, that's a huge challenge, but it's a great opportunity also. So I wanted to share that.
It's a nationwide challenge, Bev. It doesn't exempt us from trying to figure it out, but we really are struggling with just the availability of units to use this opportunity of getting these vouchers, to get people housed.
Right. I have a couple who stand near an interstate and hold a sign up, and I said, change your sign, say I have a voucher, but I need a landlord, because people drive past the sign all the time. So see if it works. I'm kind of throwing those darts at the wall, Kelly. So but it is an exciting opportunity. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to share? All right. So we are looking for suggestions for the July agenda. We like to have often somebody who's doing something maybe a little new or different present. So we'd love to get ideas on that. Or if anybody has any suggestions now for a topic, we'd be happy to follow up on it.
This is Dave Crayer. I was just checking to see if there's any possibility of gathering in person again. Is that still on the radar screen? We can get a lot more done, I think, with sharing ideas if we're together in the same room.
I think it's safe for us to I hate to say it out loud, I think we could probably plan on it. And one of the things we had talked about, Dave and Bev, we surveyed folks, and there was kind of a mix of people preferring in-person, preferring virtual, or wanting a hybrid. And my recollection is we said maybe we would do 2 virtual and 2 in person. We're really open to doing in person. We are beginning to do some meetings at KHC, and it can be up to HPAC. People can mask if they want to, whatever, but we're open to that.
If HUD's getting there, KHC can do it too.
Yeah.
So am I hearing then that maybe we meet in person for the July 26th meeting?
I would like to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
I
right.
think that was
plan
Craig. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's work on making that a reality then. So it's a great idea. Any other thoughts or ideas? All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you in July.
Live and in person.
Live and in person.
Will you have a
This is
call?
Vicki